Welcome one and all, we have another game from one of the greatest media franchise of all time. I'm talking Bond, James Bond. This is Quantum of Solace. It's actually the first Bond game that featured Daniel Craig. It was cross-generation, you had it on the PS2, the PS3, the Xbox 360, the Wii, there was even a DS version actually. I'm on the PlayStation 3 version. And I've got to say, having just played it through, there's two things that this game is really missing. One minor-ish, and one major. And jumping in with the minor thing that's missing, it's the thing that tends to be my favourite part of all the Bond games. There's no driving levels. I've said before, I'm not sure I'd want to play an entire game of driving levels, but they're usually the highlight of the game for me because they're just such good fun. Apparently, the reason there are no driving levels is because the developers didn't want to commit to putting something in the game which they perhaps didn't feel they could do as well as needed to be done, or risk missing a deadline. As we all know, game developing is a lot about deadlines. So that is one thing which I really missed with this game. And mentioning deadlines, that is another interesting point about what shaped this game. You see, originally they were going to make a game for the first film starring Daniel Craig, Casino Royale, but they simply could not get it done in time to meet the deadline. So what they did was rework what they had and retitle it Quantum of Solace to tie it in with release of the film and the game at the same time. And this of course gave them time to add in levels from Quantum of Solace as well. Now, releasing a licensed game at the same time as the movie, that just makes common sense. It's what happens and it gives them the best chance to sell the most copies. But what you've got here, because you've got a mixture of the two, is a plot which is mostly not in chronological order, which means if you haven't seen the two films, it's not terribly easy to follow. Now, the two films themselves actually tie into one another, and the odds are you're going to have seen the films if you're playing this game, so it's not a major issue, but it's something I do want to mention. The game itself is quick time event heavy and cutscene heavy. There's nothing wrong with that at all, I don't mind that in games in the slightest, and it does follow the general licensed game formula. Speaking of, it also follows the formula in the fact of they take scenes from the film and turn those into levels and make them into action scenes. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I think it's probably the way that most licensed games are done, and it works for me. And speaking of the levels, let's have a look at probably the most important thing, and that is the gameplay. It plays as a hybrid between a first-person shooter and a third-person cover shooter. At least it does on the majority of the consoles. So when you're moving around the level freely, you're in a first-person view. As soon as you take cover, and that is how it's designed to play, it is a cover shooter, you'll hear the enemies shouting out constantly the same thing: we need cover, is he in cover, is he in cover? Talk about hints with a sledgehammer, but anyway. And it just changes the view there to the third person. Now, I'm sure this isn't the first game to use that. I'm sure I've played other games that use that from this era. I just can't think of any at the moment. Obviously, first-person shooters change into a third-person view for climbing and platforming sections. That's not new in the slightest. It's a bit Marmite. When I first started playing the game, if I'm honest with you, I absolutely hated it. It took me out of the immersion. I just wanted to play it one way or the other. I didn't like the mixture. But I got used to it quite quickly, and I carried on playing and enjoying the game. It stopped being a nuisance to me quite quickly once I got through the pain barrier. Now, if you do find it's a little bit too much, or you don't like this hybrid style of system, there is good news. You can get the PlayStation 2 version, which might look a little bit less pretty, but not dramatically so, and that is a pure first-person shooter. It takes away the cover system more or less entirely. Also, you have got some little climbing sections where you're on a ledge and things like that. Again, it goes to third person for that. It does make it easier in third person for that sort of thing, to be fair. Especially the parts where you're trying to walk across a balancing beam. They can be a bit frustrating until you get the knack of them. Now, of course, with the Daniel Craig era of films, they dramatically reduced the gadgets. I didn't like that, still don't, but let me know your thoughts, Bond fans, in the comments. But they did bring in some hacking elements, again just to break it up and give a bit of variety. You hack computers, doors and video cameras. They're fine, nothing special, but fine, and they're quick. The closest you come to a boss fight is there's a couple of times where you can shoot down a helicopter. You can either take out the pilot and the gunner, or you can look to just shoot and shoot and shoot until it blows up. And when you do meet a significant character who you're going to make meet his end, then that generally goes to quick time events like the ones I showed you earlier. And there's the usual explosive barrels, basically anything you see that's red, you know the score by now. One interesting thing that I would like to point out with the game is that there is a level based on a deleted scene from Casino Royale, and that's this one here, where you're on a train. It's just a little bit of trivia. The level itself is just standard and fits in with the rest of the game. I don't want to single it out as the best part of it or anything like that, but as a fan of the franchise, it's just a little interesting bit of trivia which I thought I would mention. And while I'm mentioning random things, the cameras are a pain in the arse, because although you hack them, you can't turn them off. Now you can play this stealthy or all guns blazing, it's up to you. But getting around the cameras without getting spotted, 9 times out of 10 I just couldn't do it. Maybe it's just because I'm rubbish. If you played the game, let me know, but I found that really annoying. But that was a bit of a tangent. So what is the major thing this game is missing? Is it the voice cast? Nope, you've got the full cast of the film, although apparently Daniel Craig didn't actually want to do it, he just got told he had no choice. Just a random bit of information. Is it the locations? No, not at all. It's got places like the Opera House, so it's all in there. I've said about the plot being a bit higgledy-piggledy with the chronological order, but it's still there. If you've seen both the films, they sort of meld into one anyway. They're connected, aren't they? The main thing it's missing is the Bond spark. That certain je ne sais quoi. There's something special that makes Bond special in itself. It's missing that completely. This is just a competent shooter game. It's okay, no major glitches, no major complaints, but it is just okay. It's not special. It doesn't have that Bondness. It's like they followed a recipe but then forgot to season it. Let's be honest here, Bond fans. No James Bond game is going to be the best game in the whole wide world. It's just not. It's a fact. But they're good fun and we can forgive them their failings because we love the franchise. It's the property it's based on which makes it special. And this just lacks the specialness. I wouldn't mind it being a bit repetitive or a bit short if I was enjoying having the Bond experience. And I just don't feel that this game gives the James Bond experience. It's just an action game. But you know what? The way I felt about the film it's based on was that it was just an action film. I didn't feel that was a true Bond film anyway. So maybe this game has lived up to what it's based on. It was an average film. It didn't have that Bond magical spice. And this game is an average game. It doesn't have the magic either. Thank you very much for watching. I really genuinely do appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you think I'm way off or if you agree with me. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Oh, like and subscribe. I think I'm supposed to say that. Doesn't everybody on YouTube?